welcome. What are we up to, Seb?
Well, we were just discussing how we would like to approach certain
No, I
things.
don't mean that. I don't mean what we were doing. I mean, what are we up to?
We're making a
What
podcast.
I see. Podcast number 2, I think, which
Podcast number 2.
shall be obvious because of the amateur experience people are receiving.
It's true.
So it's podcast 2 of what?
10,000.
Not the amount, the name.
The Love Foundry podcast. And
which is for what? Purpose of?
Empowering your life with love.
Okay, that I feel that covers it. I've got a little clink in my headphones, so as it rattles around, you'll have to just live with it this time around. I'll burn them and get new ones for next time.
I can't hear the clinking anymore, so
all right.
Just annoying you.
Okay, so being number 2, there's an assumption that there was something going on in number 1, but you can disregard that because it wasn't really very organized. But it's entertaining. So I think, how was Thanksgiving, Taylor?
Oh, it's great.
Well,
yep. It was a full event.
Everybody got fed in the family?
Everybody got fed in the family. Yeah.
What did you do? Being in Hawaii, did you go out and hunt the wild pig or shoot the wild grouse or grouse or whatever you get?
And then dug an emu and, cooked it in the ground, wrapped it in some tea leaves.
Good. All right.
Made some lao lao. Played my ukulele, put on my grass skirt, every other cliche.
Yeah, everybody's having a little trouble doing transitioning with Thanksgiving because we're not all equally into murdering turkeys and doing all of that. And this is all part of what we're about, transitioning out of a way in which the human race has lived for literally millions of years. I noticed they found a footprint. Was that New Mexico somewhere where they found a footprint that they figured, there's several footprints, there's a bunch of them. Apparently it was a mud flat at some point and still is. And found a bunch of footprints on it that are 1.5 million years old. Very human looking footprint. It looks like Seb just stepped in the mud yesterday.
It was.
I think it was, like, I don't even know, like 7 million years ago. It was on Graham Hancock does this Apocalypse Now series on Netflix. And he found one of these. He went and covered this.
Yeah. Well, he's terrific, but you never know for sure whether he's kiting it or not because he loves this old business. But certainly 1.5 million to somewhere past that. And I guess what surprised me looking at them, and we'll have to assume they dated them reasonably accurately. I don't know how, but Graham probably does. Is that a wild animal out there or one of your children?
Well, the one and the same.
Oh, I see.
when they're crying, it's Johnny's children.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's okay. That's part of the human thing. You want to go check on that, or you think it's under control?
Yeah, just disregard it. I'll know if it's a real cry. If it's like
yeah, the mothers have a way of knowing. They hear it. So, yeah, the thing that surprised me about it is it looked just like a human footprint, which I don't know why I thought after 1.5 million years ago, the footprint would look like Bigfoot or something, but it didn't. It looks normal. And I think, they were probably anything but normal as far as we're concerned, but to them it was normal. So the point of that in this series we're doing is that's way back there when is how this human idea of who we are and what we are and how we are got kind of rolling. But it got rolling without any consciousness of love. You had a creature that became self-conscious and aware, which is what a human being is. We are aware that we are, which is a mysterious idea in the beginning.
Yeah.
Where other creatures just are. Your dog, your cat, your whatever it happens to be, lives. And it lives dynamically, right out of living, right out of the passion to live, like a flower does. but it's not aware that it's living. And it can suffer or it can enjoy itself, and animals do. But the self-awareness is what defines a human being. It does not the shape, the fact that we look like bipeds with all this stuff, and aliens. Aliens could be human beings, but they and may not have the same kind of bipedal stuff we do, but it's the state of being in which you become self-aware. I'm aware that I live. I'm aware that the universe is. I'm aware of this and that and the other thing. Well, when we did that, we made a big step forward for mankind, but we had no idea what that meant. We just were aware. And so we started doing things. But the nature of the energy of the universe that we refer to as love was totally missing from our consciousness. We couldn't perceive it. We still can't perceive it worth a damn. So we had to build a survival mechanism in us that could survive without consciousness of the power invested in love, which has immense power, which we're beginning to realize. And that's something that when we go look at the Jesus experience, we see what happened to a guy who was conscious of love and let it express with him, not exactly through him, but with him. Well, through him too, and then you see all of these tremendous powers that love possesses and offers to self-conscious, aware beings that are aware of love. It's like, oh, that's handy. Why don't we use that stuff instead of the other stuff? Which just the four things I like to simplify love down to is transformation, transmutation, unity, and grace. Just to give four categories. We don't even know what else love possesses as powers yet. But we didn't have it to begin with. That back in the footprint days, we didn't have that. So what do we got now? Well, we've got now exactly the same thing we had then, except that we're not using it. So if we would have perceived it differently then, had we been able to, and we would have used it in a different way, and probably did. At the very beginning, we may have used it naturally, but we didn't know what it was, so we discarded it and went on without it and built an ego whose only great fault is that it does not possess a conscious awareness of the power of love. So that's where we are today. And what it did by doing that is it created an illusion of life as a thing without it. Without those powers, transformation, transmutation, unity, grace, they just weren't we weren't concerned about mixing those into the equation because we were too busy surviving and trying to thrive as creatures in a dangerous world. So that's who we think we are. Now, what this podcast is about, and it's embarrassing to be a minimum 1.5 million years further down the trail, and maybe much, much, much more than that. But it's kind of embarrassing to be this far down the road and now taking up the idea of how to empower yourself with love. But better late than never.
Yeah.
And so this is what we're about. We're about how to do that. And I have, what are we in there? We're in what? New moon of Sagittarius, right, Taylor?
Mm-hmm.
So how is that going for you?
Well, it just kicked off yesterday. We'll wait till the other shoe drops, but you know, as they like to say in all the astrological conversation, it's the time to plant the seeds. So here we are, you know.
Yeah, seed time is good. I have Sagittarius rising in my chart. It's a tropical chart, which is how astrology works for personalities. So it has a big influence on how it impacts me. And I really got a lot out. By the way, for those who didn't, what Taylor was talking about, the new moon was yesterday. I don't know exact time, but we were doing a meditation with it, with a group, and that gives us a specific experience of it, we're tuning into it. What did you get out of that, Seb? Anything?
Yeah, no, I got a lot. I also add that yesterday was Saturday the 30th for people listening at times not today. But for me, I felt like it actually change started happening a week before the new moon. And then when we got to the new moon, it was like everything I'd kind of gone through felt like it had kind of, everything was kind of coming to that moment. It was like it started and came to that place. And I was speaking with Dan before, and it was like my life got like burst, and all of the pieces were like on the ground, and I was kind of picking them all up and assessing each piece and looking at like, how is this working in my life, and how do I want to move forward. And the overwhelming thing that I got from the new moon and through that whole experience was how I want to approach life, I think, more than anything. And following like the creativity, the flow, the joy is like, for this moment, is the most important thing. It's like, if I'm not coming from that place, then I can offer nothing. So whatever it is that I'm doing, I have to find that, and it has to follow that and flow with that and be in alignment with that, or I have to align myself to it. And that's how I'm going to get love, be in that relationship with love in myself and offer it to the space, is through that joy and creativity and flow. And so I'm looking at my life and all the places where that is strong to me, that offers more of that to me. And so I'm just kind of making changes.
Would you, it's a bit muddled because, and I think the muddling is normal, that there's an old catchism that says, when you step away from everything that you've known and into something unknown, the first natural response is confusion.
Oh yeah.
There's an eagerness to it because there's a sense of joy at the new discovery of something, but it's going to be confusion because all the old patterns that we were using and relying upon, like those footprint people, they were relying on the patterns they were building for survival, but they were far down the road from where we are now, thinking about exotic shit. So it's confusing. And because we don't know what to sort out and what to keep and what to throw away. And the truth is, we have to throw it all away.
Yeah.
Because it's so new and so different and so utterly transformative that there's no data inside our brain consciousness, our human consciousness. There's plenty of data inside your being because your being is already living in love. The inner nature of your nature is filled with parts of you of your anatomy that you haven't yet brought forward and experienced as joyful participation in who you are. And when you do, it changes everything because there's such important pieces of the anatomy, things like the soul and what that actually is, which we could define it, encyclopedic definitions of it, but when you experience it, then it becomes real for us. Then it becomes our participation with that idea. And beyond that, you've got the nature of whatever spirit is, which is even more difficult to define than the soul. And the world has already developed a system for all of this, and it's might be referred to as what is significant, which refers to the spirit aspect, the thing that makes it, without which everything else falls apart. And then what's the meaning of that, which is the soul aspect, which gives meaning to everything, the meaning that binds all the wholeness into a sense of self. That's what meaning does. And that's what we would think of as one of the aspects of soul. And then there is the artifact of that, which is the human being, the human consciousness. So we have significance and meaning, and then the self. And we have the idea, which would be the spirit aspect, the ideal, which would be the meaning aspect, and then we have the idol, which is the things they stuck up on Easter Island, which we don't know who did or why particularly. Some little guys long ago built these things facing all in one direction. So we know that there's an idol created, and we are ourselves a living idol, a living expression of the ideal created between spirit and matter, our material nature and our spirit nature. So these three levels of beingness are awakening in the human being. And there's a lot of things we can do about that. The Buddhists do all kinds of things with that concept. And so do Hindus, and so do existentialists, and so do the Greeks, and so do religions. So everybody's trying to zero in on reality. Remember, in all religions, philosophies, isms, these aren't realities. They're pictures we create, mostly in our mind and in our feelings, about reality. And what we're about here is putting people in touch with reality itself, which contains throughout all of it, from the highest to the lowest, love. Love is one thing that penetrates everything. And it's knowable. And not only knowable, but expressible through ourselves. Yeah. And that changes everything about our life if we can do that. If we can acquire, align with, and express love through our nature, then everything changes. So we have to set a table for that. Much like the Thanksgiving feast we just went through, you got to start with a table and a tablecloth. Otherwise, Jim Carrey can't jerk it out from under all the stuff later. He did that in one of his movies. I don't
It was remember The Grinch.
Which. Oh, it was in The Grinch that he did it, right. And he did it as one of those off-the-cuff kind of things that he loves to do, and it actually worked. Yeah, because he grabbed it and jerked, and everything was going to like go all over the place. But he has such a talent for things that it just worked. So he just kept on going because that's what he does, which great comedians do. So yeah, we got a tablecloth and we put things on it, and we got a lot of stuff piled on it from our human journey, from the footprints to here. But with that comes the image of reality as we learned it without love, which makes it totally fucked up, totally false. But it works. Somehow it works to get us. It works badly, by the way. If you take a look at the world, people functioning without love, you see we're not doing a great job. We're busy doing what we've always been doing, which is just pounding people over the head with heavy sticks so that we can get their stuff. But we're now awakening to the fact that there may be a way to get out of this without pounding each other in the head. So, and I concur with that. I agree. Because of those miraculous powers that are in the possession of love, which is transformation, transmutation, unity, and grace. Is that you guys, or is that the neighbors? I know you got some wild animals around you in Maui there. And,
that's the neighbors.
Chickens, particularly.
I'll close this door.
Oh, no, I don't mind them. I just was noticing. Fair enough.
One less thing.
Yeah, well, I hate to close out the outside. I was waiting for the rooster.
They had that for Thanksgiving.
Yeah. So to set what we're up to today, which is podcast number 2, I'd like to get down to the table without anything on it and realize the 2 things that you're going to need, because we're not going to tell you what to put on the table. You have to do that. Every Thanksgiving requires people being thankful. So I can't be thankful for what you're thankful for. I've got a few gratitudes of my own, and that goes on my table. But you have to decide what you're putting there for the feast. And I think that the way in which you decide what to put on the table is how you arrange for this process to happen. So I think that what you didn't mention, Seb, and I think is happening in your case, of everything breaks apart and falls to the ground, and you see, okay, here's a bunch of pieces from my past. Which ones do I want to keep? Which ones do I want to throw out? And which ones are going to be part of the new idea of things with love built into and active dynamically in every single part. So what that does is it creates a basic duality that the table needs. And if you look around in life, that's all we got. I mean, we got girls and we got guys. That's your fundamental duality as far as humans are concerned, because without the other, we don't continue. And then if you take it up a notch or 2 notches or 10 notches, you end up finally with spirit and matter itself. And you realize whoever was designing the universe chose to design it in a duality between opposites, spirit and matter, which has been described, by the way, by the spiritual know-it-alls as spirit is matter at its highest vibration and matter is spirit at its lowest vibration, which wouldn't mean much to us except that we realize they're talking about the same thing, but they're not naming what that is. So what is it that at its highest vibration becomes spirit, and then what is it that at its lowest vibration becomes matter? It's neither spirit nor matter, which is disturbing to people who love spirit more than they do matter. And they think, oh my God, I'm going for spirit. That's where the good stuff is. Well, but that's not the thing itself, is it? So the only thing I know that works fluidly, easily, and uniquely between spirit and matter is love. It just can handle anything. And it blends the two together in us in a way that creates a joy. So you need duality as a fundamental on your table. And the duality you're talking about, Seb, is who Seb was. We've all got that end of the duality. That's who we think we are. That's how we grew up. That's what our parents gave us. That's what the world shows us. And if we read 1,000 books, then we get all these other images that other people have. The Greeks have ideas of what that reality is, and so do the religious people, and so do the existentialists, and so do the scientists and the quantum physicists. Everybody's got an angle on this. If you haven't read any of those books, then your angle is simpler. It's not worse. Their angle's not better. It's just way more complex. Elon Musk has a really complex idea of what reality is as a human being. But what idea does he have about what reality is when you completely infuse it with love? I think, like everyone else on Earth, he's doing that. He's seeking that completion. But it isn't there in that ego, intellect, and emotional maturity and physical being that we've been developing in for all these centuries. It lies outside of it, which makes it really difficult to find if you think everything in the universe is in your intellect. And the scientist says, no, everything in the universe isn't in my intellect, but when I discover it, it will be. So that in itself is a challenge, because will it fit in there, or will it cause it to fall apart like yours, Seb? So I think we have to draw a line and realize that on this side over here is who we are and who we think we are, and over there is what life is like to live if you're completely infused and empowered by love. That doesn't disempower your intellect. It doesn't disempower your emotions. It doesn't disempower your physical being, which is what the personality is built out of, but it empowers them.
Yeah.
But it empowers them with love, which means it changes them because it has what? It has transformation. That's how things transform. It has transmutation. Well, that's not the end of it. It also has translation, and it has transfiguration, which is what the religious people do. Why is transfiguration sort of religious? Because it has to do with changing your whole character, how you think about yourself. And what's the difference between the transfiguration of a human and St. Francis of Assisi as a saint of the Catholic Church? Well, if we looked at it, we would say love. He became transformed and then transfigured by love. You know, that was a guy that went on crusades. He was on a couple of crusades, which aren't just a cakewalk down to the corner and back. You go out and get involved with people who really aren't interested in your crusade. They're interested in something else. So he was not a weak man or not a silly person. He was a person who had developed some real experience. And then he hits this wall where everything falls apart like it did for you. And when he awakens from that experience, he realizes it's completely different than I thought. And for him, he brought up what I consider to be the two things that are required for everyone to make this journey. All the people out there need two things aside from a table: clear the table and put duality on the table, which is something that you are now and something that you're going to be. And realize that the going to be part, when love fully empowers you, may be so completely different from who you, not maybe, but logically will be so completely different that nothing will make any sense that way. And you'll have to build a new sense of yourself in love. Well, that's like, well, wait a minute. I didn't sign on for a complete remodel. I just wanted to wake up to some truths that would make my life a happier place to be. So we can't help that. The changes that are going to happen in you, Seb, are going to happen if you want to take on empowerment with love. There's no question that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So are you going to decide where to draw the line on half the amount of love? See what in for a penny, in for a pound. Is that the expression?
Yeah.
So what are you going to do about it? You're going to just stop where Seb starts to feel like, wait a minute, I didn't think I was going to get this skinny, or I didn't think I was going to get this tall. I didn't think I was going to get this wise. Whatever it is, once you're into love, it's a mess. You can't draw a line there. You're just kind of like, oh, hell, I've got to go all the way with this.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to mug myself up and have neither. So my point of this is that it's going to be really different. Now, my point of view is that is really different. One of those esoteric gentlemen in the spiritual universe said once, if you want to know what the nature of the soul is, and we haven't talking about spirit up there, we're talking about soul in you, because people have this idea, what does it look like? What would it be like to be that? How does that function in my nature as a human? That you can start with imagining it as something completely the opposite of how you identify yourself as a personality. Now that's not a little opposite, completely opposite in every single dynamic, and that would be closer to it. So, and that foretells change, doesn't it? It means something's going to change here. And so we can't imagine that because we're stuck together as a body with a limitation called skin. And then we realize, well, I'm not totally limited by skin because I have feelings that go out from me, and I can feel how if Taylor starts crying there, I can feel her emotional angst if something happens, or if Seb starts laughing, which could possibly happen. We're waiting to see if that's a possibility even. There, we got a smile, but that's not necessarily the real belly laugh kind of thing we're looking for. But you are British, and we understand. So, I guess sidetracked so easy. So different is really different. So there's two things to guide us. One is knowing, and the other thing that guides us is joy. I don't think any other two things will get us there.
Yeah.
If you don't have those fundamentally on the table first, and thankful for them and grateful for them and foundationally using them, then we're going to get confused really quickly when things start to fall apart in the personality structure, and we wonder where we're going.
Yeah.
Well, we're going.
Those are the tools. When I spoke about everything burst and I kind of picking all the pieces up and looking at them, those are the tools that I use to reflect on what to use. Because at first I had this sort of emotional reaction to this bursting and everything kind of collapsing, but it was the joy and the knowing that I reflected to all the different pieces that I started to kind of piece things back together and find a clear direction through with all of that kind of, because it's like, what do I know? And I'm looking at the thing I'm putting in front of me, which might have been an interaction or a way that my life is heading, or an idea about how I want my life to head. And also following the joy, the feeling, does this feel like it's opening and expansive, and for me, there's like this creative, joyful opportunity bubbling if I kind of if I hold something and I can see a way through that the love can come through. And I didn't mention it, but I'm always looking at the love part of it, like how does love come through this, what's useful about it, and the knowing part allows you to kind of differentiate certain things and know what sort of path. I'm bad at explaining it because I'm kind of still going through it, but the knowing and the joy is the how I've kind of starting to piece things back together.
Well, we need to see how sloppy you are with it, because everyone else is too. When things fall apart around us, and I've had things fall apart around me more times than I'd like to mention due to my own bad architecture, but when they do, then we're all in that place where we fumble around and look really awkward and immature and unable to do things. And so do you have a resonance with that, Taylor? I mean, women have a different take on this, by the way, I think. So how do you feel about that, Taylor?
Yeah. I mean, I agree. And it's like the knowing, the problem with when you're in that place is you want to cling to things, or you want to apply old patterns, and you have to remember to release that old pattern of, going back to what's comfortable. You have to let those pieces kind of fall, at least in my experience. And just, for me, I just don't even touch them, at first, because it's like you want to, or at least in my experience, I want to cling to what has been, to what's comfortable in me, because those situations are really uncomfortable. Change it can be scary. And so you want to, rely on those old patterns, and I would say step back from that. And then knowing comes because.
Hold on just a second, because you're talking about knowing, and Seb was talking about joy. See, there's two different things going on here. Mm-hmm. That's why I said these two qualities on the table are aspects of life. And what you're talking about is really true, Taylor. It reminds me of that Japanese art. I don't remember the name of it. I don't have one of those kind of guys that can look everything up. Who's that guy that Joe Rogan has, that looks everything
Jamie.
Up for him?
We need a Jamie.
The secret Jamie that makes your life work perfectly well. And but they have a form for that art when you drop a Ming vase and it shatters, and it's got immense artistry poured into it. They take gold and put all the pieces back together, and it makes it into something more beautiful than it was. But that's based on this same desire, isn't it? Put the pieces back the way they were, but maybe with something a little better. Put the gold in there. And well, hi.
Hi, brother. Hi.
That's Olivia, just one of the masterpieces that Taylor's creating.
Yeah, we had to.
Well, she got them started.
They're together a couple times.
Yeah, she's building a whole new thing, and so yeah. So that part, I think I agree with you about. And but the joy is the joy gives you the sense of I'm going the right direction.
Direction, yeah.
And the knowing tells you that you are going the right direction. And I want to take a moment to talk about knowing as different from joy. They lead to the same place, a whole new ball game. But the difference of how knowing gives you safety and guidance, because people know, I believe, people know way more than they think they know. But no one in school, God help us, the schools that we were raised in and the ones our kids are being raised in now, what would be a fundamental thing you would teach children? You would teach them the difference between knowing and believing and supposing and thinking and wondering and all these words. These are fabulous words, but there's no substitute for knowing. Knowing is more than an assurance that I'm right, because we all think we know shit. Half of what we know is just ready to fall apart. But if you go to the root of knowing, you realize that knowing is a growing, increasing awareness of what reality actually is. And the moment it comes into us and adds a tiny little piece of the puzzle to our existing knowing, we know it. It differentiates itself from everything else. You can wonder about things, you can believe something, but the moment that you know a thing, everything else is gone. Knowing becomes a permanent part. And because that's not everyone's experience with knowing, it means we have misidentified the word. For example, belief is not knowing. Belief is that which covers knowing up. Comes from the same root as gold leaf. Gold leaf is not the real thing. It's something we laid on the real thing to make it look like gold. So a belief in the reality of something covers it. But the moment the reality appears, then the belief disappears, doesn't it?
Right. It's like the end of the question.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah,
disappears.
when you get to the end of the question, the only thing left is the answer, isn't it?
Mhm.
Well, yeah, I can believe it's raining outside. I can be pretty damn certain, but it could be the noise on the roof could be chickens running around up there. If you've lived in Alaska where I grew up, or it could,
Hawaii.
or
Yeah.
Hawaii, you got a few chickens. It could be chickens, and that. So there's other things that it could be, and our ears are defining it, and our memory is remembering, and we think, God damn it, is it raining or not? Then you open the front door and step outside. All belief, all wondering, all supposition, all of that goes away instantly. And knowing appears. And then understanding appears about a lot of things. But understanding is not knowing either. So these are things worth defining for your new reality. But for now, we're sticking with joy and knowing. Because joy isn't just something that makes you happy. It isn't something that feels good. But joy can make you happy, and joy can feel good. It's a thing that takes you, and here's something about joy that's important. It happens not just to you. It's something that occurs between you and something else, which means it's a group shared experience. The moment that you have joy, it's because you went deeper into a group understanding with other things than yourself. That sounds a little vague, but if you'll examine your next joyful experience, we'll realize that it has to do with love, in that it's inseparable. It has to do with the unity aspect of love. The moment we increase our unity with any other thing on the earth, butterflies. You look out the door, and here comes a swarm of monarch butterflies flying all around you, maybe 100,000 of them, and a joy arises in us. Well, why? Just because they're butterflies? It's because we're suddenly feeling shared experience with these lovely creatures. That's impossible to have without them. That particular type of joy which came from the group experience of, and I in a sort of unconventional way, it's probably true also of things that are not as positive as that in 100% circle. For example, if we have joy with the monarchs, we watch them flying around and landing in the trees, and they pass on because they're busy burgers. And we just have the memory of the joy of the butterflies. But if we're a fisherman and we come upon a school of sardines, a million sardines, and we cast our net out, then we've got a sense of joy. It came from the group experience of the sardines, unfortunately for the sardines. So that joy is tinged with the difficulty of the fact that these guys are going to be canned soon, and we'll be able to go down and buy a can of sardines, which doesn't give you quite the same joy as it would if you were a fisherman and you suddenly realize I'm going to be able to pay my rent and raise my kids and buy another fishing boat. So it's not an absolute assurance that everything experienced the joy the same way you did, but it is something that happens between us and something else, I think.
Yeah,
Now,
I'd agree with that because it feels very connected. Like it feels like there's this. I might be adding this, but it feels to me, at least at the moment, very purposeful. Like it has a purpose, it has a reason and a flow and a direction, and very connected.
well, okay, purpose. You threw purpose on the table.
It was on my mind too.
I was surprised because Tater's the one who likes to open all the boxes.
That's why I didn't open it. But when you were talking about, significance and meaning and artifact and, the idol and the ideal, I was thinking in that structure, where is it that the purpose is coming through?
Okay.
And it has to be the significance, right?
Well, it has to be way up the line. See,
right.
The joy of learning the true meaning of things in reality is that it suddenly becomes right for us. The purpose that is behind the joy is in the love. It's way in the love. There would be no love in this universe at all, except that whatever life is, and we have to assume life is something because we've got it. So because we've got it, that's evidence that it exists, isn't it? So whatever it is that has the capacity to cause a universe, it has a purpose for doing that. That's how far up the line it started in terms of history, going back in creation, something totally outside of a physical universe, the cosmic physical universe, the whole thing, the Big Bang Theory. Before that, which I don't think is probably a theory exactly as it's seen, but it's something happened back there. And here comes a universe out of nowhere. What they call in the old esoteric world, the rootless root or the causeless cause. Well, it's a chicken and egg thing, but it came from somewhere. And it came with a purpose. Otherwise, no urge to do it. So what came before the purpose? Well, I suppose an urge. And what came before the urge? I don't know. An itch. Whatever life had somewhere in a place where there's no physical body, how could it have an itch? I don't know. But something starts this, and it creates an urge, and that creates a tension of some kind, and that creates a purpose. And the purpose comes forward with a motive energy. And the motive energy that it comes forward with is the will to make that purpose happen, right? This is not a perfect expression of what life did, because I don't remember exactly what I did when I did that as a creator of the universe, because I'm way down in it here with not much memory of any of that. But it did that, and it came forth with will. Well, right in there, in that coming forth with will, was whoa, hold on. Love has to come forth with this will. Because if it doesn't, I don't have a universe that works. I need a universe that works. And it won't work without love the way I want it to. It would work maybe the way humans live, but it's not working very well. So I want love to be out there with it. So that comes forth. And then what happens after the will and the purpose and the urge and the love, then comes intelligence. So
You
I
got your
want these.
pattern.
It's a pattern, and it's a blueprint, and it's an ordered existence. It has to come out with a certain kind of order, because that's all in the purpose, isn't it? The purpose isn't just throw it against the wall and see if it sticks. It's an unfolding of what went into the purpose. And that requires development and ordered living and all the things that happen in the universe. Well, we're a universe in process. So we're not certain of all of these things yet. But one thing that we're working on, as if it could possibly be true, is that love needs to come into us as an empowering aspect of that original purpose, of that life urge. Because if we bring it in, then suddenly that pattern in us that the universe is using, the same pattern the universe is using, becomes our pattern. Because it's in us then. We suddenly have, and if there's any other missing elements that we aren't applying to our life, then we need to figure out what they are. But once you apply love, a whole lot of other elements join you, don't they? That's where you get the transformation, transmutation, unity, and grace. Those things come with the love, which means that it's a pretty amazing aspect of this life thing. And it gives everything to life that makes it worth living. And joy in us is our sense of connection to that. So if we follow the joy, or as they say in the Buddhist conversation, if we follow the bliss, then we're going to lead ourselves into the fullness of that as an experience. But as that fullness unfolds in us beyond the emotional sensation of joy, it's going to become knowing. So if we just follow joy and knowing, holding this duality of this is what we've been and this is what we're going to become, then we have a foundation for empowering ourselves with love. If you can just get down to that and study that just a little while, then you realize that what you're going to become over here, or I'm not very good with cameras like this. This is just a left hand or a right hand. Oh, so over here we got this. This is where we've come from, making that footprint in the mud. By the way, the whole issue of reincarnation doesn't even come up in this conversation, but it's going to have to at some point. So maybe that was actually Seb that stepped in the mud.
Next podcast.
His very feet. Yeah.
Yeah, and that would be a good thing if it was. It would say that he hasn't made very damn much progress in all that time. Wouldn't you think he'd at least be Elon Musk by now? But the point is that if it was Seb, it shows that there's a great continuity of living. That would be the good news. The good news is that was you, which means that you're a really persistent bastard. You can just keep living somehow back into the world again over and over, which is what reincarnation foundationally talks about. But it means you're a little bit slow, if you don't mind my saying so.
Oh yeah, I think that's a given.
But if we're all the same age, and I think we all pretty much are soul-wise, that's my personal philosophy. That's how it lives in me, which may be wrong. Then we're all a little remedial in this sense. We're not, I'm reminded of that Gary Larson joke, Gary Larson was a brilliant comedian who did all those single panels, and you'll see him on YouTube. And the one that was as a single panel cartoonist, he was brilliant. But the one is where he's got this little character you like, which is this little boy with glasses who was just always a victim of some silliness. And there's a sign that says, school for remedial learning or something like that is on the sign. And he's on the steps and he's pushing against the door. And there's a big sign on the door that says pull. That's the most popular single panel that he ever created about that boy. And it just reminds me, that's us. We got to own that. We just have to own that. And I come from a logging country where, loggers and fishermen and people like that. And yeah, it repeats itself and demonstrates itself over and over again in my crowd. So I don't have any trouble owning it.
You're going
I
to
mean-
find this hard to believe, Dan, but when I went to school, I mean, I was diagnosed with dyslexia, and I used to go see like a support center, they called it, for like extra learning to improve your reading and writing skills. And at
How'd
one
it work
point,
out?
I guess things could have been worse. But at one point, they wanted us to make banners to put up around the school, and I came up with a banner that said, "Learning support. Remember, there's no I in dyslexia," and then dyslexia, which I thought was hilarious, but they did not think it was that funny, and it didn't make it up around the school. But
Yeah, no, that would have been a Gary Larson cartoon holding up a sign. There's no I in dyslexia. Well, yeah, that's where we are. So we had to forgive ourselves for being a little bit slow about doing this. And that's hard to do. And that's why there's guilt. And that's why there's all of this self-abnegation, this self-rejection because we didn't do it right the first time. It's painful if you don't do it right the first time. If you set bear traps and then step in one of them, you really feel a little bit dumb. But you still got to get yourself out of the bear trap. You still got to try to understand what you did to create that in your experience, and where is that taking you? Well, it's taking you towards a wiser understanding of what a one-legged person is going to do with his life. And that's just the price we pay. And we have to let go of the judgment of ourselves for setting bear traps. Is your house on fire, or are we getting a message from the mothership?
that's our 52-minute warning time.
Okay. Yeah, put the fire out, Taylor, and come on back.
Crisis averted.
She's still listening to see if it's resulting in screaming. Often strange and odd sounds are followed quickly by children screaming for adult to come in and put the fire out.
Luckily,
Yeah.
Johnny's around, so there's one adult already.
Well, this is the joy of doing something with human beings instead of something with machines. I like machines. I'm not really down on those little cars that are driving around with anybody in them.
Yeah.
But they're here, and so we have to make the best out of what we got and see if we can turn it into something we welcome. But it's hard to welcome an empty car into your community.
Yes, it is.
It just kind of like gives you nothing to connect with.
Hmm.
And I think if they put a face on that, maybe we should just paint a little happy face on the windshield. But then people would realize there's nobody looking out that windshield deciding what to run over or not. So it's a struggle. But Elon will figure it out. He's
You're
big
still
on that.
muted, Taylor. There you
Sorry.
go.
I'm back.
And the sound has been silenced.
Yes.
Well, okay. So if we're empowering people with love, we got to get around to it at some point because people are waiting for it in their life. But this is a big shift. As Seb's mentioning, it's a big, big shift out of everything we've constructed without love into a reconstruction with love. And love is intelligent. It's fabulous. It's filled with this incredible wisdom, because the nature of what it's called in all the esoteric books about it is love, wisdom. They're stuck together like joy and knowing. It's a dual thing because everything else is dual. Why wouldn't love be? And so we have to accept the fact that it's going to be a big change. And big changes need a new foundation. And if you look at the Renaissance period, when they built all these Gothic cathedrals, I saw where Notre Dame came back online and the bells were ringing out over Paris. I think it's Paris. Is that where Notre Dame is? Paris? I've never been to Paris, so I really don't know. I couldn't figure out whether it was Paris or Italy. Italy's got a bunch of cool stuff. Yeah. Well, you're half Italian, so you'd know all about that stuff.
But I've also been over to Paris because it's not far from England.
Oh yeah, you guys get to go to Paris for lunch and shit like that. For us,
it's easy.
when they had the Concorde, we could go to lunch in Paris. Maybe they'll bring it back. If we get our UFO buddies in, we can go to Paris in like, well, 20 minutes or something. We're slowing it down just so we can have a drink on the way. But all right, so Notre Dame's back online, and the Notre Dame was this whole Gothic cathedral thing, which was the difference between this, which looks like praying hands, but it's actually this arch, this Gothic arch, which carries the weight down here through the curve out this way in that over here and then down to the ground. So you can push down on it, and it's fragile up here at this point, but it's transferring the weight to the ground. And it's like, oh, that makes a great arch. Well, the Romans had arches a long time before that, because the Renaissance that I'm talking about with the Gothic arch, with the cathedrals, that's somewhere around 1600, 15 to 1600. Okay. But the Romans were doing it this way, just stacking bricks up until you make a little curve and they lean on each other and you form an arch. And they built some stuff with that that's still standing. So it worked out really well. But when you go to a new type of architecture like this, you're going in the direction of the architecture of love, as far as I can see. I don't know what the architecture of love looks like. It may look a lot more like Bucky Fuller's geodesic dome. Now, a geodesic dome looks a lot like the Roman arch, which had the bricks. But it's fascinating because it's triangles put together in a geodesic way that no matter where you push on it or how you push on it anywhere, as a dome, not just an arch, it transfers all the weight to the circle of the ground. And there's really no limit to how big you can make a geodesic dome that will hold itself together and transfer all the weight. Because we do live in a gravity universe, whether love is available or not. So these are progressions that I think are going in the direction of progress, true progress. And in the end, we might get to love and find out some really startling truths about ourselves that completely wipe out how we think about ourselves now. And if so, you're going to have joy at that discovery, or you're going to reject it. If you discover you're a jellyfish flubbing around in the universe with a trillion other jellyfish, that might be disappointing to you if you're looking for the cover of Vogue magazine. So how are you going to accept great change? I mean, change that's really radical to how you think about things that make you happy. And it's not that you're on Vogue magazine, Seb, but I know that dream of actually being there has probably been haunting you as you get older. But being on the cover of Vogue as a jellyfish may not have been what you were thinking about. So
I don't know.
Taylor,
I think I could rock a
Taylor
jellyfish
doesn't care.
pretty good.
She'll take the cover any way she can get it. Women are just all about that, right, Taylor?
No.
No. Okay. All right. I've been wrong before about women. I could probably be wrong again. So my point about this is be prepared for something utterly different. My friend Ariane, who's the inventor of what's called non-positional thinking, is one of the most brilliant human beings I've ever known. And she has this study and teaching and whole idea of mind science, which reduced down to one sentence is what is it that you could see that by seeing it changes everything? It's just that simple, which is what you're talking about. Changes everything. And that can be just the idea you have for making a motor car and put an electric engine in it instead of a gas engine. Or it could be how you're going to look in a love-built universe instead of a intelligence-built universe with a bunch of old architecture. So it's a wonderful position to put yourself in. But by seeing it, it changes everything. It doesn't tell you you're going to like it. It doesn't tell you that's what you hope to see. So we know that down the road, everything is going to look utterly different, just like it would to someone who made that footprint in New Mexico. They wouldn't have any idea what's going on in New York. And it would be really revolting to the nature. It would be rejecting of the nature, because there's pizza everywhere, but they wouldn't see any of it as food. There's all kinds of things everywhere, but it would just look threatening because of machines running around. You look at a stoplight, now everybody stops, and the machine, everything would be wrong. But we have to assume that when we become that, everything will be right, because that's reality. If you add love to some place that's missing, because love is real, then you're going to be at least more real than you were a minute ago. So anything going in the direction of actual reality, assuming that we're living in an actual less than real construction, and it isn't hard to look at the world and see that we're functioning with a less than love construction. So if we go in that direction, it's going to feel better. It's going to be more interesting. And the two things that we want are joy as we go. If we don't have joy, fuck it.
Yeah.
Now, right at first, it might not seem joyful. So don't be too, I mean, Taylor, there's moments when she'd probably like to just toss the kids back out of the boat because she can't quite see the way it's going to evolve into a joyful appreciation of love. I had 3 kids. I know that feeling. But then we reconsider and we go, okay, maybe I can get through this. I can get another one of those. I didn't know it was going to be that easy to break, because I didn't think anything could break it, but they did, and they broke it. So I've been through that. It's amazing what guys can break. If we can't break it, we'll shoot the damn thing, and then that'll break it, by God. So, so that's how it goes with us. We're moving forward towards something that we're unknown, but as we get to know it, as knowing replaces our lack of knowing, our lack of understanding, then we will be certain that it's real. And we'll have to go into knowing more at another time, because it's just it opens a huge, satisfying sense of connection once knowing becomes something we possess and we're growing. We don't need the meaning of knowing. We need knowing itself. You don't need the meaning of love or the picture of love. You need love itself.
Yeah.
And we're good. The intellect is great at making pictures of things that later you're going to turn into things. Tesla said, every invention I created, and he created more than a few. When you think about the electric motor, for example, he said, every invention I created, I imagined it to the last detail, to the last switch, to the last part, before I ever put pencil to paper. And then when I built it, they worked. Each of them worked the first time, which is pretty remarkable. But so, yeah, we can think it through, but that's all it is. Intellect is creating the blueprint for it. And it's in the mind, but you can also draw it on a paper, and that is actually a blueprint. But when you build it and put the power to it and the motor turns, now it's a thing. It's a real thing. And that's the difference between the reality and the intellectual idea of the reality. So knowing, then he knows that the motor works. He doesn't believe it. He doesn't suspect it. He was pretty sure, or he wouldn't have put all those parts in there. But once he did it and it worked, then he said, yeah, now I know it. But he already knew it, or he wouldn't have been so damn self-satisfied with it. But we aren't so sure about what the world looks like and what we look like in love. So we need duality. Now, here's why we need duality, and we'll end it at this point. And we go back over these things because empowering your life with love, which is our object, isn't learning how, it's actually doing it. And it only comes from inside a person. I can't empower Taylor with love. She has free will, which means she has to select every little part and put it in place and then run it in her in order for that love to be empowered in her. So, and I have to, and so do you, Seb, and so does every single human being. And it's one of the places that things go wrong in this world of politics, where people want to decide to put all the parts in somebody else and then flip the switch, and then they'll be empowered with what they need so that the world will run better. Well, that's
Dr. Frankenstein.
It's kind of a Frankenstein approach, isn't it? Yeah, so it doesn't work, does it? I mean, it does in a Gene Wilder movie, but it doesn't with us. So yeah, we have to build it from within, because it's a matter of releasing from within the heart, within the deepest center of ourselves, that power as it comes out and finds its way through all the components we've put in place and then expresses. And that doesn't happen inside someone who's been built a completely different way. So that reconstruction you're talking about, Seb, is not a bad thing. It's a necessary thing.
Yeah.
And if it looks completely different than you thought it would, then that's okay, because it's still you. And when it's you and it has love in it, and it still is intelligent, because you're not going to build it without intelligence, and you still got will, because you're not going to build it without a willingness, what are you missing? Just the memory of what you looked like before.
No, nothing. I feel free of what was before.
Yeah. Well, the freedom comes from knowing you've kind of used it up. I've kind of used up that guy. Well, I'm old, so that's part of it, but I've just used up being that type of human being anymore that doesn't have that. So I'm going to miss it in a way, I'm sure, because I miss growing up in Alaska. I don't miss Vietnam. I miss certain things in my life. Well, I kind of miss it. I miss the people. But so these things are going to go away. And what replaces it, though, is new experiences with love, with everyone else, because nobody went anywhere. The miracle of love, in my view, is that nobody ever died. Ever. They just went somewhere else. Now, that's a euphemism to people who go, well, where the hell they go? I don't see them. Well, yeah, a lot of people do. A lot of perceptions are opening up in the human race of greater spaces in the universe to occupy other than a physical body. So, and now I just had a dream last night with someone in it, a friend from an old time ago, who showed up, and it was a wonderful experience in the dream. But to other people, maybe Freud or somebody, that's not real. Well, I enjoyed it. So my sense of joy says, well, that's okay. I enjoyed it. I have joy with it. Do I know that that was that person communicating with me from somewhere else in the universe? I can't prove that knowing yet, but I'm not going to exclude it either. I'm not going to buy into a belief that denies it, because I don't think the person who formulated that belief, whether it was Freud or somebody else, could prove it either. They don't know it either. So rather than having the humility to say, well, in my perspective, this is just a shadow on the wall of your own imagination. Okay, that's your point of view. But that doesn't make it true. And I don't take joy in that. So when that knowing and that joy of where that person is comes to me, I expect it to be real. I expect it to be something that gives me joy and gives me a knowing of the continuity of life past one human death. Well, I've had that proved in my life many, many times, so I don't really worry about that. My knowing is fairly substantiated in the other worlds of existence, but not for everybody. So I can't make that true for Taylor. She has to make that true for herself, and as do you. But it's taught me that when we get to being who we are in love, boy, is the universe going to look different. It's going to be like, oh, who was that guy that didn't know that? Now I know it, and now I have great joy with it. So, and that's why this duality, it's going to take a long time to let go. I like the personality on this side, so I have to remember left and right when I'm looking at a camera. I like to think of this as who I am now in the personality sense, and this over here is where I'm going with love. I don't know why, but
Well, that's a good point. You know, buy into a belief, you sell yourself short. You know, it's like because as soon as you're holding on to that, you know, you're completely disregarding and letting go of the far more important, the knowing side. Because once you know yourself in love, you know, then all that other stuff just it's gone. It just falls away. It doesn't hold anything anymore.
well, maybe not. I don't know how that'll live in other people. That's the way
Yeah,
your thinking
that's
is
true.
living in you, and that's partly because you're willing to let go and take on something completely new. And I don't mean a little bit different, like you're going to look more like Sophia Loren and less like Taylor. If you think she's more beautiful than you're going to look more like, you're going to sing more like Taylor Swift than you do. You're going to, in Seb's case, we have no idea what his objective perfection of self looks like, but it may not be anything we think of as human. But when it is in you as a reality and it's radiating through your human, because you're going to be human for a while, I think you will be in a stunningly beautiful human. I think you're pretty stunningly beautiful now, but I think that just increases as love and joy and knowing increases, because beauty and perfection are two things that just are there in love. Truth, beauty, love, they're three things that come together in this single unity, aren't they? So I like the direction this is going. I just am going to be surprised maybe at some of the changes that will occur in me on the way to getting there. And I have to have a map to follow. And the map I'm following is that this is who I am now. And this is what I'm going to, no, damn it.
It's the other way around.
This is, yeah, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What's up there? All right. So who we are now and who we're going to be are two entirely different things in looks and appearances, because that's the idol. That's the form it took. That's the artifact. Whoever put that footprint in New Mexico is as much of an artifact as the footprint itself. That artifact is long gone to dust because of the bones and the flesh gone the way to dust, but the footprint's still there as a memory of it. So we're the same. It's all going to change. And I'm willing to let all the changes happen and to realize that I myself am something completely other than that. And the physical appearance that assumes, filled with love at every aspect of myself, might look incredibly different, but it will be reality at that cycle of time. And so will everybody else. So we'll all get to know each other that way, and it'll be quite interesting. But with the qualities of love invested in our lives, as that gradual change occurs from one to the other, then we're going to find ourselves welcoming it. We're getting more confidence in it. And fortunately, we have spiritual beings who have moved on ahead of where we are. If you look at the Buddha and you look at the Christ and you look at Hercules, maybe, we have a sense that there's a journey that we're on down there, heading down that way, and that when we get there, it'll be all right. But joy and knowing are going to be the foundations, and this distance between the two. Yeah, that guy and this guy. That's going to be real. And we're going to look back and be okay with that. And we're going to look forward and go, wow, that's going to be exciting, because knowing and joy are going to be stronger there. They're going to be fuller. It's going to be getting more and more. And if you just hold that pattern in your mind and know that that's what the universe is doing, The whole universe is doing that. So take a second and tune into a universe of life doing that very thing. If you take a second and do that, that's part of where we're going. We're going into that empowerment. That power comes from life itself. And you're going to grow into an awareness of that power in you, taking you there. And then you're going to be aware of that in you, which is resisting that power because it doesn't want to go there. And you look at it and go, well, why not? It's like trying to take your kids somewhere they don't want to go. It's a bad trip until they want to go there. So you go, look, we're going to the zoo. Why don't you want to go to the zoo? Well, they've got a damn good idea. They saw a picture of a tiger that's at that zoo, mauling something to death for dinner. And maybe they're like going, no, I'm not going to the zoo. I'm like, oh, it's fun. It's going to be like, no. They're seeing this being mauled to death by the tiger in their mind. So we have to take the time to find out why we might not want to go there. But they're not going to be mauled to death at the zoo. They're going to get to see the tiger anyway. So we're a bit like that. We're children lost in the wilderness trying to figure out where love is. And when it changes everything, that we're going to be the thing that we change into. We're not going to be something left behind on the trail. So once you are okay with that idea, set that into yourself and let it be your foundation. And once you're okay with the idea that it's your free will that is making this movement from over here this way, your free will is taking every one of those little steps. And the moment your free will says, no, I'm not going to the zoo, I don't like the feeling right now, that's the joy. If it's not increasing, hold on, stop and find out why. And when you're back in with touch with the joy, keep going. And the knowing will keep increasing, which tells you, okay, I'm going the right direction because I now know more than I did. And then you keep moving in that direction. And pretty soon the other goal, the goal of what you're going to become over here, well, you have a problem. It's because I'm left-handed. That's what it is. So when you're going to become this over here, and that starts to become okay with you, you start seeing what that looks like. It's not going to be Frosty the Snowman with a carrot nose. It's going to be something else. And I like the idea of it because love changes everything. It takes all the boundaries away because you don't need boundaries with love. You are held in your individual identity perfectly easily without it. But that doesn't happen until it happens in you. If that happens in me, that's great. But it has to happen in you, or you're going to be concerned about losing your skin. Well, skin is not a separation between you and something else. It's a boundary defining you at a certain level. So we have to change everything about what we know about those sciences and about those things and about how consciousness lives in us and can function, because your mind is reaching way beyond your form and your emotions are reaching beyond your form. So what the hell's the form actually limiting? Well, it's keeping your blood in place. That's good. So we have reasons to have form, but we also have existence beyond form. So all of that has to become knowing. And it will if you follow the joy. And if you give yourself the duality, both of these, in order to do it with, this and this are going to become this at some point, and be happy with it, because joy and knowing will be together right there. So that will be full empowerment with love. And you'll have made the change. And life will be good for the human race when we do that. We may even stop beating each other up. Now, where would you like to go with it from there, Sam?
Well, I would just like to add how it feels to me, the joy and the knowing. And for me, the joy is kind of like it's giving me the direction to head, and the knowing is like the what do they call them at bowling? The guardrails. You know, the knowing is helping me from like going off of the like reservation. You know, it's like I bump up against the knowing, and it puts me back into like a straighter line to following the joy. And
okay, but the object in bowling is to knock down 10 pins.
yeah,
And those aren't guardrails; those are gutters. And once you're not really very good at bowling, are you? And once the gutter claims your ball, it just takes it straight in, and you miss all 10 pins, and somebody else gets to win the game if you throw enough gutter balls.
that's right.
I only say that from having thrown a few gutter balls in my time. So, but it's probably not the greatest metaphor, but work on
we
that.
get the point, though.
Some sort of
we get the point.
The knowing is kind of like pushing me back into
the lane.
Yeah, exactly. And there was something I said earlier.
She's Taylor Bowles. What's your score, Taylor?
Oh, I don't know.
See, the human race used to know its bowling score. Nowadays, it doesn't know even know its own bowling score.
But there was something I said earlier.
It's probably higher than my IQ, but
well, I think it is for pretty much everybody except Elon.
Yeah. But I said about how like all the pieces kind of laid out, and then I piecing them back together. That wasn't correct. It's more like I was looking at all the pieces, and I picked up the tools that were useful that I've sort of acquired from my life, but I'm not piecing anything back together. I'm leaving down the path with the tools that were still useful to take with me, and leaving everything else. I'm not piecing anything together. I'm going down the path. That's kind of how it feels and seems to me. So I just wanted to correct that.
Well, why I would agree with that, it sounds a little wonky, because who is going to piece you back together? That's the point. It's coming to a place of trusting there's a pattern inside of you that you don't even see necessarily. The pattern in love of how to rebuild you according to the genius of love is going to be completely different than the pattern of intelligence and how to rebuild you according to that pattern based on the absence of love. We ruled love out by free will. Love is an annoying, persistent, like a bottle fly at your picnic, is buzzing around you all the time looking for a place to land, but we keep swatting it away because it's inconvenient to us. It's trying to change how we think about things, look at things, act towards things. So if you discover that there's a pattern in you somewhere at a depth beyond everything you know, which is where Ariane's beauty lies, where you see that thing that changes everything, then you're letting that pattern come forward, and you're not holding your own ego pattern, because you see, ego is an illusion built without love. So it's not going to build love in. It likes the idea of love because that's kindness and being good to each other. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you don't get in my frickin' way in the McDonald's line, or then I'm going to tear your goddamn head off because my kids are in the back screaming for their Happy Meal. So we are the beasts that we are, but at the same time, it would be okay with us if things were better. But we're talking about a pattern in love that says, I'm going to rebuild you according to a divine pattern, which we assume is true if the universe has any reality to its life. And that pattern is going to be functioning with love, and all the rest of you will be happy about that, or you'll be joyful about that, and you'll know the truth of yourself. So if you're willing to let that have a shot at you, then you're holding up this part out of you, the future. I got that right. You did notice that, right? Mm-hmm. This future you over there. And how different that's going to be from this guy. Oh, I love this. Now that I got the two puppets right. Yeah.
To anyone just listening and not seeing the video, there's no puppets. It's just Dan's left and right hand. Occasionally he puts them together.
Well, these damn cameras reverse everything. So anyway, the point is that I'm becoming that. And as I become that, I'm letting go. And that's part of the catechism of the spiritual path, which is we have to give up as we take up. No question about it. You got to let go of the old to take on the new. And we just hadn't bargained for that much change. You mean I have to actually learn to like Donald Trump? I have to learn to love him? Well, that's it right there. That's it. I'm out. Fuck that. Or I have to love Kamala Harris or Biden or the Democrats. I have to love them. Yeah, that's a requirement of love. So we'll get down to how you can possibly do that with that much opposite and why it works and why it's necessary. But we got to get this foundation here first. And so let's try that and build on it a little bit. And then next time we'll start going upward from the scaffolding. We got to get the foundation, you know, and once you get the foundation down and you get the cornerstone set, as the Masons would say, then we can build the whole thing up from there. And as we do that, it'll stand. It won't fall apart quickly. And I don't know what the foundation looks like exactly in love, but it's at the center. And it's at the most esoteric or the most subtle or the most effeminate, if you want to put it in the feminine masculine. It's going to be the most effeminate thing in the universe. Is going to be the very gossamer substance out of which the entire universe is built, out to its density, out to its rock solid. And that kind of distinguishes a certain difference between masculine and feminine, doesn't it? And we see when we look at beauty, like Taylor over here, we see that subtlety. We see how much more graceful, how much more beautiful it looks than Seb down below, who looks like a slab of rock with a couple of eye holes in it.
Jellyfish.
But the whole thing is that's the way we do it. And we're going to meet in the middle, but it's not going to be one or the other. When we meet in the middle and fuse the masculine and feminine together in ourselves, and that's another aspect of love. What happens to sex when you get to love? Well, hell, I'm not giving up sex. I don't care what happens. I'm not giving up coffee, and I'm not giving up sex. You want to bring love on, that's fine. But there may come a place where you're joyful about that. Oh, yeah. Reminded you, you're running low on caffeine there, huh? So, yeah, that's the thing. So we'll find out as we go, but you're doing it with these opposites. You're doing it with who you were and who you're going to be. And you got plenty of time using free will to control the progress from one to the other so that you don't suffer, but yet you have increasing joy and increasing knowing. Now, that's a nice way to travel. Increasing joy, increasing knowing, and no suffering. The only suffering you're going to experience is giving up something that you don't want to. Well, you don't have to. You got free will. You can hang on to that beard you've got as long as you think it makes you look better. I'm not talking to you, Taylor. I'm talking to Seb. So, yeah, that's how we're going. So, all right, that's it. That's enough of that, I think. And get us out of here, Seb.
Okay. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you, everyone. We're going to play out our music and catch us next time.